everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vancouver Real. My name is Mike Zaremba, and I am doing another solo cast today. Andy wasn't able to make it for this one, but don't worry, folks. I'm here, and we will go through this little journey together. So buckle up and enjoy the ride, folks. As per usual, we're podcasting here at Float House at 70 West Cordova Street in Vancouver, BC. Floathouse.ca is our website. We specialize in flotation therapy and have been doing it for almost 4 years now. So if you haven't heard of floating, basically you're going into a maximal sensory reduced environment that entails of 10 inches of water with 900 pounds of Epsom salts, and you float effortlessly because it's super dense. The water is the same temperature as the surface of your skin. So once you settle into that solution and get nice and still, it's kind of hard to tell where your body ends and the water begins. That boundary kind of dissolves. And on top of that, the tank is light proof and your ears are underwater with earplugs. So you don't really hear anything external to you. And so the whole point is to reduce external sensory input, and that puts you into a very strong parasympathetic nervous system state. All about relaxation. It's literally called the relaxation response. And it's a tremendous environment for introspection, for creativity, for just purging the stress that you've built up over your week, releasing muscle tension, joint decompression. So physical and psychological recovery, basically. And I definitely see it as a time that I go in there for, I look at it as a competitive advantage. I go in there and I carve out this time in my week to get really present, to connect with myself by disconnecting with external reality for a little while and checking in with what's going on internally. And I believe that a big part of this whole thing that we're doing is internal. It's all internal in my mind. So making sure you're checking in with that part of yourself and then bringing that out to the world, your best version in a calm, cool, collected, clear manner. So check out floathouse.ca. Thanks for listening to my little rant on that. And I want to make another plug to Omega Point YouTube channel. Omid is our brother from another mother who helps us behind the scenes here at Vancouver Real. And without him, we could not do what we do. So much love to Omid. Check out his YouTube channel. It's fantastic. He does really high quality stuff in terms of kind of inspirational, society challenging videos. So check him out. That's Omega Point on YouTube and Facebook. And lastly, one final little plug for the Vancouver Real meetups that we do every month. We have a community group page, so on Facebook, Vancouver Real meetups. Go check those out. You can join the group, see when our next meeting is. We do a lot of variety of things, whether it's something physical, artistic, technical, personal development. We bring in people all over, from all over the city with all over different themes. They're all free, and we want to see you at the next one. We'd love to connect with you. So check out the Vancouver Real meetups. And we will slide into today's podcast. I'm really excited that this gentleman connected with us and was open to coming on the show. And I'm speaking about a man named Adam G. Steele, with an E on the end of that Steele, right?
That's right.
First of all, Adam, welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And you you do a lot of things, it sounds like, from what I've been checking out online. You're an entrepreneur, basically, multiple business owner, and you've started this new show called the Steele Entrepreneur. And this is a show that you have on YouTube, and you were kind of just sharing with me before. It's like a way of documenting what you're doing in terms of your businesses. And I'm going to read your little bio here just so people have a little bit of a background on you. And since 22, you started out by making your first internet dollars by selling email addresses by the bundles online. And I love how you have there. Yeah, that's a thing, folks. People can sell email addresses. Actually, that's not a surprise, really, based off how valuable an email address is now that I'm in business. I know that. And you have multiple businesses, and you have an ever-growing team that people you have working with, 50-plus people now. And you're growing more. You're doing more businesses as well, including this the Steele Entrepreneur Show on YouTube. And so why don't you take us into the show a little bit? Tell us a bit about this entrepreneur show that you're doing, and then we'll kind of get into some of your background and experience. But start off with what the Steele Entrepreneur Show is all about.
Cool. So it's a show that we started about a year ago. Started out as just a YouTube show. It started off as kind of an attempt to challenge myself. I'm working on it, but not good in front of camera. I remember sitting in my living room, and I had a fellow at the time helping me, Lucas Mateo. He's a speech coach, among other things.
Cool.
And I had him helping me just with my appearance on camera, with my presentations, with things like that. And just watching myself on video, it was terrible.
It's hard to watch sometimes, eh?
Yeah. And I quite honestly, I don't do it now.
Okay.
I've been told that I should, but every time I do, I end up, changing something, and then that leads me down a path of just being super, super critical about myself. But in any event, we started that show as, and I say we because we've got quite a few people running it now, as we had talked about, and as you have running your show as well. Mm-hmm. It's not a one person effort. No, sometimes
it takes a team for sure.
Yeah. So it's kind of evolved, and it continues to evolve as we go along. But it is now just myself documenting my process, some of the things I'm working on, some of the things I'm learning, and what comes of that, or how I've changed a certain circumstance. Maybe it's, I've got some real audacious goals for this year, and I've run into some hurdles, as far as my time is concerned. And you mentioned that, I run a number of different businesses and having to shift focus and all that kind of thing. So I've been really on sort of a self-help kind of kick. And so I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that on the show. I'll talk about some of the things I'm struggling with, some of the things I sort of sought out to help me, whether it be books or whether it be blog posts or people or what have you, and some action items that I took from those books or from those people, how I'm structuring it, what I'm going to do, and then I'll check back in. So I'll do another episode and come back and say, okay, so this is what I did. This is what I saw. These are sort of the results, some of the pitfalls, some of the things you can avoid perhaps. And so it provides utility in that sense, but it also, like I said, for selfish reasons, it provides sort of documentation as something that I can look back at, say in a year or 2 years, 5 years. I think in 10 years, I'm going to look at this and really love it and perhaps hate it at the same time.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I can attest to that. I can find, personally, I do go back and watch and mostly listen to our shows, and I do get benefit out of that. I can see how, everyone's going to work differently, right? And in terms of how they hear themselves and view themselves, I find I do get value from going back and listen to our episodes and not just to critique myself and evolve myself that way, but also to relearn what our podcast was all about. Because quite often, like when I'm doing these shows, I'm kind of really in this conversation, and I'm not absorbing the content like I could if I was just listening to it while I'm driving or something like that. So I find for me, I like to listen to our episodes to critique, but then also just to make sure I get that download again, and I'll do that with other podcasts as well. I find just subjecting myself with relevant information or things that I find interesting or important are really huge for just helping it get ingrained into my brain or my patterns or my behaviors. You know what I mean? I think we do work on these patternistic things. So I don't know. I would encourage you to go back and try it. But
there's one thing that I hadn't even thought of that you just sort of mentioned is there's utility in that, right? I'm not interviewing anybody, so it's just me talking to myself kind of thing, or talking to my audience. But, I find like when I highlight something in a book, that's reading it twice essentially,
right?
Or, going back to it, that's then reading it 3 times. It would be the same thing. It's going over that material again and having it really sort of sink in. So there's definitely utility there I can see.
Yeah, and I found you mentioned you kind of been on a personal development little kick lately as well, and something that's kind of what got me into entrepreneurship actually was beginning to just have this greater confidence in my ideas that I was learning. I got some business basics down from working in a family business, and then just getting empowered with myself to act on my ideas that I was getting. And I found I had to go through that. There's this one album that I was listening to over and over and over again. I had to just keep programming myself with these new ideas and these thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And I found it worked. Long short of it is that it worked, and I needed that repeated, because we are creatures of habit, and those old belief patterns that can be limiting and preventative, they definitely, they're in there deeply. So you gotta sand them away and then put something fresh on top that's going to replace it.
Yeah.
So what sort of things have you done? Actually, before I get into the personal development stuff, tell me about the businesses that you do run. So I don't know if you're still doing the email address selling stuff, or if you've evolved from there. What kind of stuff are you involved with now in terms of your personal businesses? And basically, whatever you can share with that.
Sure. So the email addresses thing, just to touch on that quickly, it was, at the time I was trying to learn. This was 2010. So I was trying to learn how to be an internet marketer, which is sort of my core competency, or it's my training, I suppose, self-trained. And somewhere along the way, I had come across a forum, like an internet marketing forum.
Yep.
And I saw folks literally selling email addresses. Like, what I would do is I would create 10 Gmail accounts fresh, and then I would sell that for $10, $1 an email address. And people would actually buy that. And they used it for various purposes, different types, spamming, things like that. But it was $10 I didn't have before. It didn't take me that long. And as I kind of got to understand the world of outsourcing, I kind of went from there. I found somebody in India and started to scale up a little bit. And
interesting. So just you would make email accounts and then sell them?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I know, but it was
crazy.
It was rent. It was how I could at that time make rent, pay for my hydro, whatever.
So basically people are buying these email addresses, because they think they're getting a real person. And then spamming them.
It's kind of like Facebook accounts. You've probably seen that, or on Twitter, for example.
I see a lot of Instagram.
Well, those start, in order to open a Twitter account, it starts with an email account.
Totally, right.
And so that's, in part, I'm sure that's what people were buying them for.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you discovered this little monetization avenue. You're like, okay, well, how can I scale this up? Okay, I'm going to go and outsource it to India or something like that, get them to make lots of email accounts, and then you started selling more of them?
I just acted as the broker, essentially.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't what I set out to do. I set out to bring internet marketing to small businesses. But I was having a terrible time trying to get people to trust me with their websites, with their marketing, because I didn't know anything about it. Go figure.
Right.
So I just sort of fell into it, and it was just one way that I could kind of keep going. I could extend my runway just a little bit longer.
Okay. So I'm really curious. So to what scale were you able to grow this email address business?
Never that big. By that time, I'd found something else just a little less shady.
Okay.
And so I think the most we might have been selling is, let's say, at 1,000 a month.
Okay.
At the very most. And that was after we had found some people in India, in the Philippines to create them.
That's so interesting. Well, I guess you gotta, like in Star Wars, you gotta know how to use the dark force with the what's the other side? What's the good side?
The light side?
Yeah.
Is it the light?
The light?
The light? I think it's just the light.
Yeah. So, if you got to cross into the dark side, at least you know how it works. You know it's there. You're not ignorant to it.
Yes. And there's a lot of value in that. That understanding that space, that ecosystem was very valuable going forward. And it was from that experience that I met some other folks, some folks that were interested in buying something a little bit different. So as I mentioned, my core competency is internet marketing or search engine optimization.
Okay.
And part of that, really, I would say, maybe as much as 50% of the puzzle is links from other websites. It's kind of like a credibility thing. If Google trusts Forbes and Forbes links to you, then by extension, Google trusts you.
Right.
And so people would buy these things.
Totally.
They would pay me to build them for their website or for their client's website. And so it kind of snowballed from there. And then, different stuff. And so today, we have The Magistrate, which is a internet marketing agency. We take on certain types of clients who are looking for internet marketing, more exposure in Google, more exposure online, period. and help them get more customers, help them get more calls, more people through the door, that sort of thing. So that's what I like to look at as kind of the infrastructure. Magistrate is the infrastructure. It's the people, it's the team, it's the processes, the guides, all that kind of stuff. And from there, that wasn't always as strong as it was or as it is today. And so from there, we picked up a couple other different ideas. We found different niches within that space. So we found folks that wanted to just buy links, period. That's it. That's all they wanted was links from other websites. And we were already kind of doing that. So we thought, well, why don't we just service this niche? So we created a company called Loganix, Loganix. And it serves just that purpose. And we've got a couple different sort of spins on that purpose, but strangely enough, this sort of what was a side hustle, what was something that was just intended to support the magistrate while I could convince more people to trust us with their marketing.
Right.
It has now tripled, quadrupled, maybe even more than that, the magistrate in revenues.
Wow.
It's super, super strange. It was never intended to be that.
Wow.
And it happened anyways.
So is that something you still have going?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It makes up a good bit of my focus because it is what, what's paying a lot of those, 50 somewhat people.
Interesting.
So it's, quite frankly, it's almost passive.
Wow.
It's almost,
So help me break this down because I'm so alien to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because and I think other people are as well. Like this is a whole other side of internet that we don't even really understand and know. But I think for some people, especially if they're entrepreneurial or have a business that they're trying to do, could find at least some insight into this or like intrigue at the very least. So you're talking about buying links. I got that part. And you sell links. Is that the predominant thing that this company does?
Yeah, sell and build.
Build links.
Yeah.
So websites.
Yeah, kind of. Actually, that is a part of it as well.
Okay.
But I'll give you an excellent example.
Okay.
You probably have a Yelp profile, right?
Sadly, yes, you're forced to. I hate Yelp because of that. Sorry, I'm going to go on my little tangent.
Please, go for it.
Yelp is, we used to pay for it just so that other competing businesses wouldn't come and have their ad on our site. But like you don't get to choose if you're a business owner if you have a Yelp or not. Yelp gets created by whoever wants to. And then you're on there and people review and it's kind of like, I get it. But it's kind of like having a whiteboard on the front. Let's say you have a brick and mortar business. It's like having a whiteboard on the front of your building that you don't get to put there and people can write whatever they want on it. And I really don't like it, man. But okay, back to your Yelp experience. Or where you go with that?
You're not the first to say exactly that. I hear that a lot from small business owners.
Yeah. But, it is what it is. I think for some businesses, restaurants and stuff, it could be good. But for us, I thought it would be okay, but it doesn't generate anything for us. And if anything, it maybe deters people or lets people, slam us, when we're always just trying to do our best. People, that's the thing, when they're on Yelp, they assume you're this giant company. You know what I mean? That you're Yelp is a giant company. Yelp is this brand. And like you said, that affiliation thing, people just feel like they can just smear you when you're like, man, we're a small independent business startup that's trying to do our best. And they're smearing you online for maybe something that like was just an honest mistake.
Yeah.
And even though you apologize, they go and smear you. And so it's just gross in that way. People are just kind of really relentless on there.
There's been businesses that have sprung up around doing exactly that. They'll do this. They'll smear you, then they'll send you an email and let you know that, hey, they're a reputation management company and they're here to help you.
Oh my God.
And they'll say, hey, we're going to remove this Yelp review for you. And they know how that feels.
Wow.
Right? Like I know how that feels to get a bad review. It is the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And so they're reaching out at a point where you're very vulnerable.
Sure.
and they make a ton of money doing it.
Wow, I had no idea, man. This is the dark side of the internet.
Man. It's,
you have to lower
an
the
ugly
dark with the
ecosystem.
light. Yeah, crazy. Okay, so back to you where you were talking about with this business. I'm still curious. So take us back.
So we were talking about links. We brought up Yelp.
Yes.
For a business, it is valuable to have these, what we call citations, which is basically name, address, phone number, their business name, address, and phone number on sites like Yelp, local business directories, essentially. We call them citations.
Okay.
It is valuable to have those because it helps them rank better, so appear better, have more visibility in Google.
Right. Okay.
And they know it, or they're coming to know this more with more education, and a lot of small, medium-sized business owners are getting more educated in this sort of thing because they've been burned a couple times, which is common.
Yep.
And agencies like my own, like the Magistrate, they know that, but they don't want to do the work. They don't want to submit to Yelp, Angie's List, Super Pages, Yellow Pages, White Pages, and it just goes on forever and ever and ever. They don't want to do that work.
Gotcha.
So they hire someone to do it. And so that was one of our first, or I guess it was probably our second little hustle, was these citations. It was fulfilling that labor-intensive, annoying need for agencies and small, medium-sized businesses that required that sort of thing.
Interesting.
And that snowballed into various other similar things. And today, one of, I would say, probably our most popular services via Loganics, certainly one of our most, profit-rich services is editorials. It's getting people featured on Forbes, getting people featured on entrepreneurial.com, and so on and so forth. And you get lawyers, for example, they're the perfect example. It means a lot to them and to their business to have that credibility, to be able to slap Forbes on their website and say, as featured in. It's not only just, we talked about links and how that's a good credibility builder and helps you appear better in Google. It's not just that, it's being able to slap that on the website. Yeah, it's somebody visits your website and sees that you were featured here and here and here, all places that they know and respect.
Right.
They're going to respect you more.
Right.
They're more likely to give you a call.
Right. So now, to what degree, like you see that all the time, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I do understand its value. Now, to what degree does, how do you have to be on that site to be able to do that? I mean, I'm sure people do it, like if they're literally mentioned in one word line on that website, and then like as featured in Forbes when they were like literally not even part of the main story or something.
Yeah.
So like, is that basically all it takes? Like, as long as you are on that site in one word form or another, whether it's your logo or anything, it's just like the word or your name. Like, let's say my name was on it, then I could probably slap that on there and say as featured on Forbes. Like, is it to that degree, or is there actually some sort of regulatory?
There's no regulatory.
I didn't think
anything other than just how comfortable are you with that. Some people will say as mentioned in, and that's like a little bit, it's not featured, honest. Right? It's not you're a contributor to, it's you were mentioned. Right. It's more honest. Most people don't read that anyways. They just see the Forbes logo and that's it.
Now, would Forbes, do they monitor like who's using their logo and stuff like that?
I don't know. I would imagine they probably do to some extent, but then again, imagine what a job that would be. Right. And they're having enough trouble just trying to stay afloat, trying to, get more ad impressions than the next guy. And these sites, they're everywhere. Forbes is big. It's got great name recognition, of course, but there's lots of guys that are a lot more aggressive than Forbes, and they're getting, just as many clicks. So they're constantly, if they're going to put their focus somewhere, that might not be the best place. Right.
Yeah, this whole world of internet marketing is so insane. Yes. There's so much on there now. Now, like your whole realm is links, websites, emails, this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm super butchering that and simplifying it, obviously. But then there's a whole social media realm to it as well, and content media and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, but they're all on the same platform. They're all on the internet now, right? And it's just, this is just such a crazy time. I can see how there's so many niche, marketing avenues and revenue potential, people like yourself finding these, people value this and people need this, people need that. There's probably lots of different unique pathways and avenues along in terms of internet marketing, which is such probably a general term to use towards all this kind of stuff, right? Like what, I don't know. Do you feel like that stuff's being exhausted? Or do you think there's always going to be new things to pick up on for internet marketing and evolve from? Like, what have you noticed in the time, the almost 10 years that you've been involved in this sort of like business and industry? Has it evolved from your eyes, and how so?
So I think Google has certainly done their darndest to crack down on folks like myself who are trying to, essentially game the system. We understand how the system works, and we deploy certain methods, strategies, whatever, to work that system a little bit. Some people do it a little bit more in a more sketchy fashion than we do, perhaps. But, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. And so they've come out with different updates to their algorithm and things like that to try and keep that behavior at bay. I've noticed that at least internet marketers in general, it used to be very search engine focused. We're trying to appeal to Google, and Google is our focus, and that's all we give a crap about.
Right.
But it seems like these days, and I think this has to do a little bit with Google, it's what they want to see. It's what helps people get more visibility. There seems to be a little bit more focus on the user. How is the user moving through that website? And it's not just Google's focusing on it. It seems like the whole industry is kind of shifting towards user experience and user interfaces. And there's tools that have popped up like Hotjar, for example, which monitors people's activity moving through the website, where their cursor goes, how long they're on a particular page, which has existed for a long time. But things like where are they clicking, how many people click that particular button, where are their eyeballs kind of going, which sort of is where their cursor is kind of going. And so looking for like dead spaces, like if they've got their cursor in this one particular space and thousands of people are doing the exact same thing, there's nothing there, then it would be the internet marketer or the business's goal to try and put something there. If that's where they're going to be, then put a call to action there, put a form there, put a video there. I don't know.
Right.
So it seems like it's kind of moving into a sort of more, we call it white hat space.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean by white hat? What does that mean?
There's black hat. Well, I guess there's black hat internet marketing, and there's gray hat, like sort of in the middle, and then there's white hat. And black hat, there's a bunch of different definitions for it, but I tend to think of it as, and you've probably heard of this happening before, people have their WordPress websites broken into, and then somebody will inject a page or multiple pages or links or just spam essentially into their website because they were able to break the password, or they were able to get in via a plugin, like a WordPress plugin. They didn't, someone forgot to update. And so, eventually someone finds a backdoor or something like that. That's, in my mind, black hat.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there's lots of stuff in between. And then white hat would be, maybe more content focused, create great content, find a great delivery system, whether that be ads or whether that be, reaching out to other, similar websites that might be interested in featuring it. That would be, more the other side.
So basically internet marketing as it's kind of been designed by whatever website you're on, social media platform, Google, whatever, like is using the structures that are provided within that framework, at least the visible one. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other back end things you can do and whatever that is. But it's I guess like the real complexity kind of came with the internet being so interactive, right? Like we are in control of our experience there. Well, and now that's even being debatable based off of what Google can do and how the content they're giving you based off of all of like their, whatever you've searched, your search history and all that stuff, right?
They're more ad focused and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But, just the fact that now it's like super interactive and they can measure literally our behaviors on any certain website, what we're attracted to, how we're moving, what
monetize
what works
based on that.
Yeah. Like it's a completely
but
different.
But it's not just them. It's every other website on the internet that aims to sell eyeballs.
Oh, for sure. And you got to do it because that's what the internet's doing. And like versus television. Television is just like you watch this screen now, and there's no real interaction. The internet is all interaction, right?
Or when you watch television, they bring you back to the website, or they're trying to get you to, grab your Instagram or grab your phone, and so you're watching two screens now, and they're trying to trigger different activity that's offline, off the TV, I suppose.
Right. No, that's a whole other like kind of evolution, right? Is how now TV is diving into internet world via this interactivity and stuff like that. But I mean, and now you see smart TVs and the internet and TV kind of merging. And all the major television networks have to be super on social media now. If they're not there, then they're just missing out on so many people.
Everyone is if they're not there.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-blowing.
It's a big job for business owners.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And so bring us into your show. Is this kind of, we're having this pretty elaborate internet marketing discussion here, like on a very basic level for me, because I don't know this crap. Is this kind of what you get into on the show? Not maybe to this type of detail, but just what your personal journey of entrepreneurship is what you're kind of documenting. And
yeah, I think it's more the journey than it is anything else. We certainly touch on internet marketing where it's relevant, but the real focus is on building a business. It's on getting intelligent folks who are ready to make that jump, to take that jump. And whether it means quitting their job entirely and just, if that's the type of person they are, if they need to quit and just go cold turkey and go for it and finance it on their credit cards or whatever it might be, which I certainly don't recommend. But for some people, that's what works. I was listening to Danielle Laporte yesterday at Man Talks, which was a wonderful event. And she financed her first business, hustle, whatever, on her credit cards. Wow. For some people, they need to be backed into a corner. So it's just looking at these sort of different approaches, different paths to success, different paths to entrepreneurship, and hopefully inspiring more people to become entrepreneurs, to build businesses, to use their creative genius, and showing them easier ways perhaps than some of the ways I went about it.
Right. And so far, how long have you been doing the show for?
1 year-ish.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, but something like that.
Right. And how's it been going? How are you finding it?
It's a lot of work. I didn't expect that going into it. Right. And it's really snowballed. We started with just the show, and then we started doing some sort of clips on the side. So I'll do a little SEO. Like I've got, how you can, on YouTube, you can separate things into playlists. So we've got a playlist for just SEO specific content, a playlist for just fleeting thoughts, things that come to mind, kind of like almost, a minute and a half, 2 minute thoughts on entrepreneurship or what have you. So it's getting all that online. It's optimizing that where possible for greater visibility. It's the designer. So Julie, for example, who works on all our design work, whether it's designing our newsletter header, it's preparing the newsletter in the first place and coming up with the content for that every single week. It's a full-time, like for Sarah, who's basically our show manager, it's a full-time job for her. She spends all week doing it.
Crazy. Yeah.
And then there's, managing Julie, there's managing Angelo, who helps with a lot of the minutia, the stuff that perhaps Sarah ought not be working on, and so on and so forth. And then there's me sort of overseeing that and just making sure that I have content ready to go. And that might be having to, lately I've been reading about a book a week. And that's, to be able to digest that book, so read it, digest it, grab sort of the action items of it, and then be able to speak to actually putting those action items into play, which is really what you want. You don't want to listen to someone, I think, that has just read the book. You want somebody who has some context to attach to those readings, to attach to those action items.
Right.
And so what I'm finding is I'm constantly just chasing, or just it's challenge against time, constantly just trying to finish that book and trying to get those action items down and to deliver a show worth listening to. And
so how much time now do you find you're personally on a given week, going towards the show and your energy there versus the other business?
I personally haven't measured it because I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time. And I know that if I were to speak to, a business coach or someone like that and tell them this is what I'm spending on this, this show versus what I'm spending on the actual business, the stuff that's putting food on the table for all of our team members, he would say, what the hell are you thinking about?
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Well, and then if I was that person being Adam Steele, what the hell are you doing? What are you thinking about? What would you say to that person?
I would say that...
What are you doing?
I'm going to look back on this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and it is going to be invaluable to me to be able to just sort of look at where I've come from. And you get a perfect example, and I'm certainly not comparing myself to him, but Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, he did the Ask Gary Vee show. He turned that into a book, right?
Right.
It's just a byproduct of the show he did. So maybe for the first time, if I took the time to journal, and it's totally selfish, but I'm not good at taking out, I had, that daily journal, The Artist's Way.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I had that for a while, and a few weeks, maybe a month I was doing it. It was painful every single time I did it. But video, for whatever reason, is not so bad for me. Like, I can do that consistently. So if that has to be the way that I can get my thoughts onto paper, to somewhere where I can sort of look back on them, then I think that's going to have great utility in the future. And then, as a byproduct, again, if someone is able to get some value from it in the meantime, then that's wonderful. And some folks have definitely approached me and said, hey, that tip did it for me. Like, that's what got me over that hurdle.
Nice.
And that's important.
Cool.
So that's what I'm doing.
Nice. No, that's good. A good answer. I think if that was that guy, I think, and it sounds like to me, you're quite passionate about it. You're really into it and you enjoy exploring. It seems like you've been able to get some growth out of it as well.
Absolutely.
Can you maybe touch on that a little bit? Like, how has doing the show, forced you to grow in different ways?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I'll give you an example. We do every week on Wednesdays at, I think it's 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, I do a little reading. Essentially, we call it office hours or book club, or I think we're going to rebrand it as something called Shelf Life. And as I mentioned before, a book a week. So I'll grab a book, I'll read it during the week, and then on Wednesday, I will present it, and I will look at all the things I'd highlighted, and I'll read them and tell folks what that means to me and what it might mean to you. And if there's context there that I can grab from my own life or from my own business learnings, then I'll apply that for certain. Mm-hmm. But it's keeping me accountable. I'm accountable to myself, but better, I'm accountable to them. I'm accountable to whomever decides to watch that, Facebook Live, right, or that episode or whatever it is. I'm accountable to read one book, to take whatever it is that book aimed to teach me, to try it out, which has been a real hurdle for me. Is for the longest time I would read books, and that would be it. I wouldn't highlight, I wouldn't tag them with something, I wouldn't try and summarize them myself, I wouldn't do anything past reading them. Mm-hmm. Worse, it was usually an audiobook, which for someone like me, who's always trying to do something else, I can't focus on two things at once. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't working for me. Right. So it's forced me to do more. And through that, I think I would say it's correlation at best, but through that, I think that's in part why we've, as a company, seen such gains in the last 6 months or so. Is because I've really been committed to that, and I've been committed to taking these wonderful things that I've learned and to actually employing them, putting them into action. Right.
So when you're reading a book a week and taking out like the most valuable parts that you want to incorporate into your life, or are these books business books, or are they personal development books?
I think one of the important things, or at least one of the important things that I found, is to read a book that applies to whatever problem you're trying to solve now, not 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. If you're going to go to the effort of reading 200, 300, 400 pages, it should be something that you can benefit from now, that you can get some early gratification from. And so I've picked books specifically that help me try and solve whatever problem I'm trying to solve. So, for example, this year, as I mentioned, I set out some really audacious goals, and I realized very quickly that there was no way I was going to reach those if I didn't make better use of my time. And I've tried to optimize my time a lot, but still there is a limit. And so reading Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek, for the third time, I finally took the time to write stuff down, to actually, cue things up for me to try and so on and so forth. And so I started eliminating stuff. I started delegating stuff. I started automating stuff and so on and so forth. And that, just that book itself, and I read a few others like Effective Executive and Eat That Frog and certainly some others that aren't coming to mind right now. And I took little pieces from each one of those books and applied them, and I went from probably going to bed around 1:30, something like that in the morning, every single morning, just because I had to get that support done, or I had to empty my email box, or I had to do whatever, to I stop work at about 10, I'll read for 2 hours, and then I'll go to bed feeling great. No stress in the world.
Right.
And that's much because I took the time to take what I was learning, what I was reading, and apply it.
Right.
And it's made a huge difference in my life.
So, yeah, I mean, you're expressing how much before that, like how much you're doing, how much you're getting done. How do you find the balance in all this? Like, how do you keep yourself together emotionally, relationship-wise? What do you do to keep that life-work balance in check? Or do you have a life-work balance?
I think that's probably, open for interpretation. I think everybody has whatever they think is work-life balance, whatever makes them happy.
And what does that look like for you?
Well, it starts with having a fiance who's super, super understanding. And, as a business owner herself, she gets it. She gets why I'm so passionate, why I'm willing to work the way I do. So that's it makes a big, big difference. Work-life balance for me, I think it's just making sure that, one, you're happy, but also the people around you, you're not, abusing them in any way. I've been in a relationship before where that was a big problem, where the amount that I worked was a big problem, where when we did spend time together, I wasn't present. So, just from that experience, a good example is when I am spending time with my fiance, I'm present. I'm 100% present. That means getting rid of the phone and just being focused on that interaction, on that, whatever it is. And I think that makes a big difference, that quality time for some people.
Right.
For most people, quality time is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, I guess, just understanding that about your partner, being a really good communicator with your partner. And, the rest, I went through a time where I had put a lot of, the only value that I saw in myself was in my ability to be successful in my business and be successful in my relationship. And so since then, because of that time and that turmoil and some real close calls, I have learned to diversify where I get my happy, where I place my value, or where I get value in myself. If that makes sense. Like, where if I see, for example, I've added jujitsu to my life. And so progressing in that, I get a lot of value out of that. I feel really good about myself when I move up a belt or just have a really good day on the mats. I feel wonderful. But, a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, when my business was not doing super well and my relationship was just totally crumbling, that's all I had. Right. I had not put a lot of time into friendships and things like that. I was not doing any sports. I wasn't going to the gym. That was it. I wasn't any good at this. I wasn't any good at this. I'm no good. And so today I've tried to find different outlets, little things that I can, because I know that it's a slippery slope. I can end up back there.
Right.
So
so you diversified. You find, well, one, it sounds like you found a partner that's way more compatible with your lifestyle understanding. You can communicate better. She understands you better, and you're able to understand like, well, which sort of support you need from a partner. And then also, having these social outlets such as jiu-jitsu, which is an awesome one. It's such a fun activity. Yeah. I used to do it as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Where do you practice, or where do you train?
At a place called True North Jiu-Jitsu out in Coquitlam.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
And it's just a quick shot right out from where I live. It's right up first, 20 minutes, and I'm there at most. So it's I break up my days usually.
Okay.
I'll go at like noon,
yeah,
and then I'll roll for an hour, and then I'll go back to work, and
nice.
I feel wonderful.
Cool. Yeah, and so having that outlet, and then it just sounds like you are just super passionate about your work and about all that kind of stuff. So, and that's the thing. I think it's just about having the awareness to find your balance and what that is for you, and that quite possibly will evolve over time as well in terms of the things that you're dedicated to focus on and what you do come to appreciate in your life, and that's going to be all formed off of the experiences that you have.
Absolutely.
So that's cool. So it sounds like you are very, very well read, and definitely gone down that road. What have been a couple or one or whatever, like some of your most outstanding books that have really hit home? You're like, oh, this one's a big one for me, for you personally.
I think I might have mentioned them already. I feel like everybody probably mentions them. I'm not I'm not well read. That's a recent thing.
Okay.
I used to be very ignorant to self-development, and I think it's because I had some early success and things started to snowball pretty quickly that I felt like I didn't need to listen to anybody else. I wasn't listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, etc. I hadn't even heard a podcast before 2 years ago.
Right.
So this is something quite recent. And even when I was sort of reading a couple books here and there, I was reading them for the sake of reading them because I had been told to read them. I wasn't listening to them because I wanted to improve, and that was a big shift. So I would say everybody should, I feel like these are lame choices because everybody picks them, but for me anyways, the 4-Hour Workweek was, and reading it, not just reading it once, but coming back to it every once in a while, because there's so many tactics that you may think, oh, that's wonderful, but you can't apply it now, and you'll forget about it. So just going back every year, every couple of years, and reading that over again, I think is very valuable. I think Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy was great. It sort of helped me ask myself a few questions before I begin any sort of endeavor, even just a task. Do I need to do this task? Am I uniquely good at this task? Does me doing this task create a huge contribution to my team, to my family, to me? And just prioritizing things, just picking your battles essentially. And so as someone who chronically says yes, it helped me say no a little bit more. Right. And that's been really big this year. Cool. And podcasts like yours, podcasts like the Tim Ferriss Show. I love interviews because you get to hear from people who may not be in your sector, may not be doing what you're doing, but they've had these same sort of human experiences, these entrepreneurial experiences, and I've just learned so much. I can't believe it. It's one of my biggest shames, really, that I missed that. I missed that maybe 5 years, because I started 7 years ago. 5 years of learning from people like yourself. It kills me. Yeah. But now I'm catching up.
That's it. Better late than never, right?
Yes.
And that's interesting. I was thinking about the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, just maybe yesterday even, and just how I was thinking about that book, and just based by the title, I can see, because remember how there's been that little. Well, one of the big things I'm noticing online a lot with guys like Gary Vee and I forget his name, Simon something.
Sinek?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're, basically, well, Simon Sinek went on that big rant about millennials and, how there's no delayed gratification and we want instantaneous results. And I mean, on your website even, you say, you don't need to be the next Facebook. Just do something, anything, crash and burn, but most of all, learn. and then you hear the title of 4-Hour Work Week, and people are like, oh man, they're just, again, trying to get instant gratification. However, when you started to reiterate it, that I have read it, but it was a long time ago. It's actually more about like being really efficient with your time, systemizing things. And so that, it's not that you want to necessarily work 4 hours a week. It's more that you want to do, save up your time for the things you really want to be doing, and these more menial things can be done by somebody else or elsewhere or in a more efficient manner. But it's just interesting how I could see how people in our generation as well maybe misinterpreted that book as to like, oh, I need to do this so I work less necessarily to create what I want to create. And I think that's where, Simon Sinek and Gary Vee are kind of really blowing that horn of like, no. If you really want to do this, because, you gotta, put in the hard miles for the most part. I mean, once in a while, someone might hit the lotto on some sort of project or whatever, but for the vast majority,
that sweat equity.
Yeah, you got it. It seems like the nature to it, What are your thoughts on all that kind of jargon by Gary Vee, Simon Sinek, like putting in those hard miles? Do you agree with it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with it. I one of his things is to just do. Stop sort of second guessing yourself, and that just do. And if you fail, it's all good. You're going to fail again, and you should get sort of used to that. But I think a lot of people probably misinterpreted that title. I think a lot of people can. There are some days where I remember when I was tracking my time. So I was sort of in the auditing stage, and I was tracking my time using FreshBooks just to see how, I sat in front of the computer for 12, 15 hours, how much was actually work and how much was just screwing around.
Right.
And I would maybe have 5 hours. It's heartbreaking to sit in front of. So I don't think it's an excuse to work 4 hours. But I do think a lot of people could, they don't need to be sitting there for 8 hours. I think a lot of people, if they just practice some of these things, could get the same amount of work done in 2 hours. And so 2 times 5, 10 hours a week. It's not about the 4 hours. It's about just auditing. It's about eliminating. It's about recognizing what is important and what isn't. It's about delegating. So if you can hire somebody abroad at $4 an hour, for example, to do some of the more menial stuff, then you can buy back some of your time. And then automating where possible. We've got lots of wonderful tools like If This Then That and Zapier and now with the emergence of AI and chat bots and other kinds of bots, like there is such an opportunity to. I think it's more about focusing on what is meaningful, what you are uniquely good at, what you are truly effective at versus that other stuff, the stuff that you aren't uniquely good at.
Right.
And I think that's what he's trying to get at is you don't need to be doing all this stuff.
Right. Would you consider yourself a creative person?
Yes.
When do you find you get the most your most creative insights? What sort of activities are you doing? What time of the day? Like, kind of draw that picture. Or is there any pattern to that? Like, when do you find you get your most creative insights?
I think until recently, I'd never really made time for it. It was just always just trying to make my way through my to-do list. I was always checking my email inbox. Whereas, today I check it once on the weekends. And that's it. Yeah. And, occasionally I'll just quickly, throughout the week, I'll quickly sort of scan through. But I've now got better control of my, much thanks to Tim Ferriss, I have much better control of my calendar. I take meetings twice a week and twice a week only. I batch those meetings. So I only meet people, and it's, preferably via a call. If I can't do an email, if I can't accomplish it by an email, then it'll be a call. And worst case, it's a meeting where I have to go off site, which I try and avoid by all means because you deal with traffic, et cetera, right? So I try and batch it Tuesday and Thursday between 10 and 12, and that's it. And so I've had sort of the same approach where I batch things into chunks so there are no interruptions. And so now I have these nice blocks of uninterrupted time that I've never had before. And I don't know that I found the best place to be creative or anything like that, but at least I've accommodated that 2 hours, that 3 hour block first thing in the morning where I can actually think, where I don't have these other distractions because I'm not paying attention to them. I don't have people interrupting me. I don't have a meeting that I need to run to or anything like that. So if I had my way, I think I would be most creative on an airplane. I would just fly back and forth from Toronto. I would fly there in the morning and I would fly back at night. And that's where I would do the majority of my work and creativity.
Why is that?
No interruptions.
Okay.
You don't have access to the internet.
Right.
Well, I guess you can now. You can get Wi-Fi and whatnot, but there's nothing else to do. What else are you going to do? Right. So you just buckle up and dive into something.
Do you have any form of a meditation practice at all in your life?
Tried. I think, I've been thinking, I was thinking about doing a float before I came in here, but I was like, well, what if I have a weird experience and I come in here all freaked out? So I'm sure that wouldn't have happened, but in any event, no, I would like to incorporate one. And like I said, I have tried Calm. I have tried, I'm blanking on it, the other popular one. The other popular app, I can't remember.
Headspace or whatever?
Headspace, yeah.
Right.
So I've tried them, but I've never gave them an honest effort. So it's something that I know would be valuable to me, but I just haven't, it's not been the number one priority yet.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? What, you obviously, it's on your radar. And I'm just curious, what about that experience did not hook you? What about it did not kind of take you in? If you can even identify that. I
think I can. I think it was, as I mentioned before, I was busy and I was doing a lot of garbage I didn't need to be doing. And so there was no time for that. I mean, what I was thinking when I was sitting, even for 10, 15 minutes, when I was sitting there, I was thinking about that meeting I had to run to right after this meditation. Right. And I think if I'm going to be successful at it, I need to have less of those distractions, less of those meetings. And I'm finally and this is really just in the last couple months, at a point where I have time to give it another shot. And I think I will be a lot more successful when I do.
Yeah. Would you call yourself a spiritual person?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah. What are were you raised religious or anything like that?
Yeah, I went to a Christian church for a number of years when I was pretty young. And then in elementary school, I moved to a Catholic school, and they tried to be somewhat neutral, but we still, went to mass and things like that occasionally. So I was definitely exposed to it. But I think I don't think my parents really bought into it. My mom ever really bought into it too much. And so as a result, I never really bought into it too much. And then I think, as I grew older, it was just a time thing, a time and a priority thing. Right. I just wasn't making time for these types of things. So, it's not something I really spend any time thinking about, really. Right,
right. So, what is your big personal, I don't know, what's your big motivating factor for doing what you're doing then?
When I see one of my teammates purchase a home, or when I see, their family enjoying a vacation or something like that, or going to a concert, or my main developer, Sergio, he took his daughter to this awesome concert. That is, to know that we created this together, that I created this with John and with Serge and with Chris and with some of the sort of original guys that decided to, attach their hitch to my whatever. That is, and I mean, me buying a house, that it's incredible that we could do that together, that we could make these types of things possible. And so if I can create more of those types of feelings, more of those types of experiences, more of those types of opportunities for more people, I think that would make me feel really good. So more impact, I suppose. Yeah.
Do you have any type of what's the right word here? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, like let me reframe this a little bit. So that's what you get out of it in terms of you and your life. Like, what is important to you? What do you find important? What's important and meaningful in your life?
Definitely the people. I feel it's so cliche, but the people around me, like I'd mentioned, like my teammates and certainly my fiance and my parents, and making sure that they're all living as high quality as possible of life. I'd love to, with the show, for example, I'd like to get more people where I am right now, feeling the way I feel, on the entrepreneurial journey, feeling the kind of excitement, but also, some of the failures too, like that. It comes with it, but it's wonderful at the same time in a very strange way. Like, I want to invite more people on that journey. Mm-hmm. So I get a lot of sort of value and meaning out of that. I get a lot of value and meaning out of seeing my creativity turn into things, whether that might be another business or a product for another business, or I get a lot of joy in knowing that something that came out of here actually amounted to something that people kind of dig, mm-hmm. that they're willing to spend their hard-earned money on, mm-hmm. and seeing all the other sort of side effects of that, like that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not struggling, and so I can take a vacation like that. That seems like a pretty, like, kind of up and leave if I wanted. That's a pretty wonderful feeling that I have that, mm-hmm. that freedom. So I suppose I haven't really thought about this question too often.
It's all good.
But I love to garden. I love that I have that space where I can garden a little bit. Mm-hmm. One of the things I found with jiu-jitsu, for example, is I with the organization that Connor Beaton has created, is there's like this community of people, these two different communities of people where I just feel so good going to. Like, I just going to jiu-jitsu and talking with these guys and rolling with these guys, and I just feel wonderful coming out of there. I remember I played high school rugby, and it was the same kind of thing. It was this sort of camaraderie, I suppose, that I lost, or I gave up, or I didn't pursue in any way when I left high school. When I went into college, that wasn't there. I went to a college where it was mostly night classes. It was mostly people just coming after work and just going into class, not talking to anybody, leaving, going home to their families. So there was no sort of college experience there. Right. And I isolated myself in a big way when I started my business. Mm-hmm. It just, for whatever reason, that's the route I took. Right. And it was a very, very and unnecessarily lonely path. Right. So that camaraderie that Connor has created, that I get at jiu-jitsu, it's like nothing almost like nothing I've known.
Cool. Very cool. Have you always been entrepreneurial?
I wouldn't say, well, no, I had job. I don't know. I mean, I think you can be sort of entrepreneurial and have a job. You can have entrepreneurial mm-hmm. tendencies, I suppose. Mm-hmm. I had a paper route like a lot of people. I was always selling cans, collecting cans around the neighborhood and selling those and buying whatever I wanted. We didn't have a lot of money, so it was like I could create this little income for myself when I wasn't getting like an allowance, for example. Yeah. So I think there were definitely tendencies. I remember in high school I had a buddy. His father was an entrepreneur, a business owner, and had created something really, what I perceived, and I still don't know a hell of a lot about it, but I saw it, and I saw the fruits of that. And I remember just going to bed at night and thinking, how do I do that? How do I do that? Should I go work for him for a little bit? Maybe I can just watch what he's doing, kind of thing. And it never quite transpired, but I know that seeing him just watching from afar certainly inspired me.
Cool. How old are you now?
29.
29. If you could go back and have a phone call with the 20-year-old Adam Steele, What would you tell that young man? What sort of advice would you give him, knowing what you know now? What would you tell that guy, who he was, and knowing who he was, the 20-year-old you, where he was at in life? What would you tell him now, based off where you are and knowing what you know?
I think I would say, so that was before I started my business. I would say, not everything matters as much as you think it does. Relationships fade. It's okay. Even if I was in a relationship for 8 years, it was like, it just seems so important that I stay in that relationship. Like, I'd invested so much time. Like, you have to. This is it. You're not going to get another shot.
Right.
And that's not it. It's just, most things just aren't that important. I would say, don't be so ignorant and arrogant. Don't think that you know everything. Self-development. Start learning. I don't remember if podcasts were around there, but if they were.
Start a podcast, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I would say, I actually would say start a podcast for sure. But I would say at the very least, start listening to them. Start learning from the people around
Audiobooks,
you.
Yeah.
And one thing that I wish I hadn't done is get involved in your community. Reach out to people. Don't isolate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Go to meetups, things like that. You don't have to do all of it yourself. You don't have to have all this weight on your shoulders. There are other people that would be very happy to carry just a little bit of that weight for you. You don't have to. And I would internalize everything, and it would, it eventually led me to a very dark place. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have to go there.
Right.
So.
Cool. No. Yeah. Well said. I think there's a lot in there that people can, take from, and if they are in that similar boat or at that similar age, or who knows where they're at in their life, right? But things aren't as important as we like to think of them to be. I think the mind itself can get us into a lot of trouble sometimes, and just watching that, and not to say that I'm anywhere immune to it. It happens all the time. Usually, if I am upset about something, it's because my mind has perpetuated it, Yeah. But when you're really real with yourself, and you're really real with what's going on, and you can get that greater perspective in check, you realize that, it's all good, and doesn't, it's not that big of a deal. And if there's one thing I know, the one constant in this world is change. Change seems to be the only constant that I'm aware of. Yeah. And so no matter what, whether it's going good or going bad, you can't hold on to it even if you tried. Mm-hmm. Even if you wanted to hold on to whatever you got right now, you cannot, because that is not in the nature of this universe.
You can just move. You can adapt.
Change. Yeah,
you can change yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and you accept, or you surrender, or whatever it is, right? Cool. Is there anything else you want to get out to the folks before we wrap this up? Anything that you had dying to share with the folks out in Vancouver real land?
No, I
think I would get a hold of you.
I'm on the socials.
Yep.
Everything from Instagram at Adam G Steele, Facebook / the Adam G Steele, I think, something like that.
Okay.
All the usual places.
Cool.
If you search adamgsteele.com,
right,
you'll find everything there.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Yes.
Cool. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing what you got going on in the city. I'm glad you reached out, and it's fun to meet others like yourself who are doing what they love and doing their thing for what is meaningful to them. And I think that's really, I'm really grateful you came on. So thank you.
I'm grateful for you having me. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, folks, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Vancouver Real, please give us a like or a share, comment, or a review on iTunes or on the social media channels. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, we always appreciate you joining us to the end here. And we will see you real soon. And until next time, I should say, to whatever is.